The wine glass shattered before Sable even realized her hands were shaking. She stood frozen in the kitchen of Belle Maison, Nashville's most exclusive restaurant, staring at the red spreading across white marble like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Through the service window, she could see table 7. The man sitting there had just said her husband's name, not casually, not in passing. He'd said it like a curse, like a bullet, and every server in the building had felt the temperature drop. Sable's sleeve had ridden up when she'd reached for the bottle, and now the bruise on her wrist sat exposed under the overhead lights. 5 days old, shaped like fingers. The man at table 7 was watching her. Not the wine, not the mess. Her. His eyes were dark, patient, and she knew with absolute certainty that he'd seen everything. Her breath caught. The kitchen door swung open behind her, and Marcus, the floor manager, hissed her name like a warning, but she couldn't move, couldn't think. Because the man at table 7, Lucien Voss, someone had called him, was still staring, and in that stare was a question she didn't know how to answer. If you're watching from New York, Tokyo, or a small town where nobody knows your name, stay with me. This story goes places you won't expect. Hit that like button, drop your city in the comments so I know how far this has traveled, and let's see where the night takes us. Gee. Sobel Varelli had learned to make herself invisible. It was a skill that had kept her alive for 3 years, and tonight, in the low amber glow of Belle Maison's dining room, she practiced it with the focus of someone who knew what happened when you were seen. She moved between tables like water, smooth, unremarkable, always just at the edge of someone's peripheral vision. Her hands didn't shake when she poured. Her smile didn't falter when men let their eyes linger too long. She was 25 years old and had perfected the art of not mattering. Except tonight, something was wrong. Table 7 had been wrong since the moment the reservation came through. Marcus had triple-checked the name, Voss, party of 2, and then told the staff not to hover, not to interrupt, not to fuck it up. Sable didn't ask why. She'd learned not to ask questions, but she watched. She always watched. The man who arrived alone was lean, mid-30s, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than her yearly rent. He didn't look at the menu, didn't acknowledge the server who brought water. He sat with his back to the wall, hands folded on the table, waiting. There was something about his stillness that made the room feel smaller. When the second man arrived 20 minutes later, the energy shifted. Sable was refilling wine at table 4 when she felt it, a tightening in the air, like the pressure drop before a storm. The second man was older, heavyset, with a face that had seen too many late nights and bad decisions. He slid into the booth across from Voss and immediately started talking, low and fast, his hands moving in tight, nervous gestures. Sable moved closer. Not obviously, just close enough. She'd been doing this for 8 months now. Adrian had trained her well. Listen, he'd said, just listen. You don't have to understand it all. Just remember names, faces, who sits with who. She hadn't understood why at first, thought maybe he was protective, paranoid about her safety. It wasn't until later, much later, that she realized he wasn't protecting her. He was using her. The older man's voice rose just slightly, and Sable caught a fragment. Can't keep covering for him, Lucien, not after what happened to Devereaux. Her hand stilled on the wine bottle. Devereaux. She knew that name. Adrian had mentioned it 2 weeks ago, late at night, pacing their apartment with his phone pressed to his ear. He'd been angry. No, worse than angry. Afraid. Sable forced herself to keep moving, to finish the pour, to smile at the couple at table 4 like she hadn't just heard something that made her skin go cold. She turned back toward the kitchen, but her eyes flicked to table 7 one more time. And that's when Lucien Voss looked directly at her. Not a glance, not a casual sweep of the room. He looked at her. His gaze was deliberate, surgical. It traveled from her face to her hands, still gripping the wine bottle too tightly, and then down to her wrists. She realized, with a sick lurch, that her sleeves had ridden up again. The bruises were visible. Fresh ones, layered over old ones, a map of every time Adrian had lost his temper and decided she needed to remember who she belonged to. Voss's expression didn't change. He didn't react, but something in his eyes sharpened, and Sable felt it like a hook sinking into her chest. She turned and walked straight into the kitchen. Her heart was a fist pounding against her ribs. She set the wine bottle down with shaking hands and leaned against the stainless steel counter, trying to breathe. Marcus appeared at her elbow, his face tight with irritation. What the hell was that? Nothing, Sable said quickly. I just needed a second. You don't get a second. Not tonight. Marcus's voice dropped. Table 7 is not the table you fuck up on, Sable. Do you understand me? She nodded, but her mind was still on the way Voss had looked at her, like he'd read an entire story in the space between her wrist and her sleeve. Who is he? She asked. Marcus stared at her. Are you serious? I don't... Lucien Voss owns half the contracts in this city. Music, production, venues. If he wants someone gone, they're gone. If he wants someone's career to end, it ends. Marcus leaned in closer, his voice barely a whisper. And if you're smart, you'll pretend you didn't hear a goddamn thing at that table. Sable's stomach twisted. She nodded again, but the fear was already spreading through her like poison, because she had heard. And worse, Voss knew it. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. She avoided table 7, sent another server to handle their check, and kept her head down. By the time the kitchen closed and the last guests filtered out, she was so wound tight she thought she might snap. She changed in the staff bathroom, pulling on her jacket and checking her phone. 3 missed calls from Adrian. No messages, just calls. That was never good. Outside, the Nashville night was cool and damp, the kind of weather that clung to your skin. Sable walked quickly toward the parking garage, her keys already in her hand. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her until a voice cut through the silence. Sable! She spun around, heart in her throat. Lucien Voss stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He looked different outside the restaurant, less polished, more dangerous. Like the suit had been a disguise, and this was who he really was. I don't want any trouble, Sable said, her voice thin. Then we're on the same page. Voss didn't move closer. How long have you been feeding information to Adrian Cade? The question hit her like a slap. She opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You've been listening, watching, reporting back. How long? Sable's hands were trembling now, and she hated it, hated that her body betrayed her before her mouth could even form a lie. I'm just a waitress. You're a lot more than that. Voss tilted his head slightly. And I think you know it. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and bolt, but her legs wouldn't move. She was pinned there by his gaze, by the weight of everything she'd been pretending not to understand for months. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what it was for. He just told me to listen, to remember. And you did. It wasn't a question. It was a fact, and it sat between them like a stone. Voss took a step closer, and Sable flinched. He stopped immediately, raising his hand slightly in a gesture that might have been reassurance or warning. I'm not going to hurt you. Then what do you want? The truth. He paused. How much does Adrian tell you? Nothing. He doesn't tell me anything. He just asks questions. About who? Sable's throat tightened. She thought about the nights Adrian would come home late, pour himself a drink, and sit across from her with that look in his eyes. The one that said he was calculating, measuring, deciding. He'd ask about the restaurant, about the people she'd seen, about conversations she'd overheard. And she'd answer because the alternative was worse. Different people, she whispered. Producers, lawyers, artists. Lucien Voss? She closed her eyes. Yes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sable waited for him to explode, to threaten her, to do whatever men like him did when they realized they'd been compromised. But when she opened her eyes, Voss was just watching her with that same unreadable expression. You didn't know, he said finally. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. No. But you suspected. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Voss exhaled slowly, like he was deciding something. Marcus Devereaux is dead. Sable's blood turned to ice. 2 weeks ago, Voss continued, his voice quiet, precise. He was found in his car outside a studio in East Nashville. Single gunshot. Ruled a suicide, but we both know it wasn't. He paused. You heard his name tonight. At table 7. Sable's knees felt weak. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. 3 days before he died, you overheard a conversation between two producers at Belle Maison. They mentioned Devereaux was ready to flip on a money laundering operation. You told Adrian. Voss's eyes didn't leave hers, and Adrian made a call. The words didn't land all at once. They seeped in slowly like water through cracks, filling every hollow space inside her until she thought she might drown. She'd told Adrian, she remembered now. She'd mentioned it casually, thinking it was just gossip, just noise. Adrian had nodded, kissed her forehead, and told her she was doing great. "Oh, God," Sable breathed. "You didn't pull the trigger," Voss said, "but you loaded the gun." She bent forward, hands on her knees, trying not to be sick. The pavement swam in front of her eyes. She could hear her own breathing, ragged and uneven, could feel the weight of what she'd done pressing down on her chest like a hand. "I didn't know," she said again, but it sounded hollow now, pathetic. "I know." Voss's voice softened, just slightly. "But that doesn't change what happened." Sable straightened slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. When she looked at him, something sharp and desperate flickered in her chest. "Are you going to kill me?" "No." The answer came too quickly, too easily. She didn't believe it. "Then what?" Voss studied her for a long moment. "I'm going to give you a choice." "What kind of choice?" "You can go home, back to Adrian. Pretend this conversation never happened. Keep doing what you've been doing until he decides you're more of a liability than an asset." He paused. "Or you can come with me." Sable laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Come with you? I don't even know you." "No, but you know him." Voss's gaze didn't waver. "And you know what he's capable of." She did. God, she did. The bruises on her wrists were just the surface. Beneath them were years of control, of isolation, of carefully constructed fear. Adrian had built a cage around her so slowly she hadn't noticed the bars until it was too late. "If I go with you," she said, her voice barely audible, "what happens?" "You get answers. You get space to think. And if you decide you still want to walk away, I won't stop you. And if I don't, then you help me take him down." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and irreversible. Sable looked back toward the parking garage, toward the car she'd have to drive home, toward the apartment where Adrian would be waiting. She thought about the way he'd look at her when she walked in, assessing, suspicious, already calculating what she knew and how much of a threat she posed. And then she thought about Marcus Devereaux, sitting in a car with a bullet in his head because she'd told her husband a name. "Okay," she whispered. Voss didn't smile, didn't react. He just nodded once and gestured toward a sleek black sedan parked at the curb. "Get in." Sable hesitated. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she was trading one dangerous man for another, that nothing good could come from this. But the rational part of her brain had stopped working somewhere around the moment she realized she'd helped kill someone. She walked to the car and got in. The interior was dark, leather, silent. Voss slid into the driver's seat and started the engine without a word. They pulled away from the curb smoothly, heading west, away from Belle Maison, away from the life she'd been living. Sable stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Adrian, probably. She didn't check it. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe." "Safe for who?" Voss glanced at her, and for the first time, something that might have been sympathy crossed his face. "For you." They drove in silence for 20 minutes. Sable's mind raced, spinning through every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario. She didn't trust Voss. She barely trusted herself. But when the car finally pulled into the underground parking of a nondescript building near Germantown, and Voss led her into an elevator that required a keycard to operate, she didn't run. The apartment they entered was nothing like she expected. It was quiet, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. No personal touches, no clutter. It looked like a place designed for people who didn't stay long. Voss gestured to the couch. "Sit." Sable sat. Her legs felt like water. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a glass of water, which he set on the coffee table in front of her. Then he sat in the chair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I need you to understand something," he said. "What I'm about to show you is going to be difficult, but you need to see it." Sable's hands tightened around the glass. See what? Voss pulled a tablet from the side table and opened a folder. He turned the screen toward her. This is Adrian's operation. Everything he's been running for the past 4 years. The screen showed a web of names, dates, transactions, financial records, contract amendments, offshore accounts. Sable's eyes scanned the text, but it was too much, too fast. She couldn't process it. He's been laundering money through music contracts, Voss explained. Signing artists to deals that look legitimate on paper but funnel cash into accounts controlled by people who don't exist. He manipulates royalties, skims percentages, uses shell companies to move the money offshore. Sable shook her head. Adrian's a lawyer. He helps artists. He destroys them. Voss swiped to another screen. Clara Mendoza, 22 years old, signed with Adrian's firm 3 years ago. Promised a record deal, national tour, everything she'd ever wanted. 6 months later, she was broke, blacklisted, and Adrian owned the rights to every song she'd ever written. The photo on the screen showed a young woman with dark hair and tired eyes. Sable's chest tightened. Dante Rivera, producer, worked with Adrian on a label deal, found out the numbers didn't add up and threatened to go public. Voss swiped again. Car accident, ruled mechanical failure. Another photo, another name. And Marcus Devereaux. Voss's voice was steady, clinical. He was ready to testify. He had evidence that could bring the whole operation down. And then you told Adrian what he was planning. Sable's vision blurred. The glass slipped from her hands and hit the floor, water spreading across the hardwood. She didn't move to clean it up. She just sat there, staring at the screen, at the faces of people she'd never met but had somehow helped destroy. I didn't know, she said again, but the words were ash in her mouth. I know. Voss set the tablet aside. But Adrian did. And he used you. Sable pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe, trying to think. Why didn't you stop him? People say you run half this city. I don't run anything, Voss said quietly. I facilitate. I connect people who need things with people who can provide them. It's a service industry, Sable, same as yours. That's not the same, isn't it? He leaned back, studying her. You think I don't know what it's like to be complicit? To tell yourself you're just doing your job while people get hurt? His expression hardened. I've spent 2 years trying to untangle Adrian's operation without tipping him off. And every time I got close, he moved, changed names, shifted accounts. He always knew when I was coming. Because I told him. Yes, the word was a blade. Sable felt it cut through every excuse, every justification she'd built to protect herself. She looked down at her wrists, at the bruises she'd tried so hard to hide, and suddenly they felt like nothing, like cosmetic damage compared to the real harm she'd caused. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to help me finish this. Voss's voice was calm, certain. Adrian's operation is bigger than you know. It's not just money. He's been using his position to manipulate contracts, bury evidence, destroy anyone who gets in his way. And he's protected by people with power, people who don't want this exposed. So what's the plan? We build a case, airtight, undeniable, and then we burn it all down. Sable looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected: exhaustion. Voss wasn't doing this for power or revenge. He was doing it because he was tired. Tired of watching people get destroyed. Tired of being part of a system that enabled it. And if I say no, she asked, then I take you back to your car and you go home. And we both pretend this never happened. He paused. But Adrian will know. He always knows. And when he figures out you talked to me, he'll make sure you can't do it again. Sable's blood went cold. She thought about the life insurance policy she'd found in Adrian's desk drawer 3 months ago. $2 million, with him as the sole beneficiary. She'd thought it was sweet at the time, thoughtful. Now it felt like a timer counting down to her expiration date. How long do I have? She whispered. I don't know, but not long. Sable stood abruptly, her legs shaky but steady enough. She walked to the window and stared out at the river, at the lights reflecting on the water like stars that couldn't hold still. Behind her, Voss waited in silence. She thought about Marcus Devereaux, about Clara Mendoza, about every person Adrian had crushed beneath his carefully polished smile. And she thought about herself, about the girl she'd been before she met him, the one who'd had dreams and plans and a future that didn't involve waking up afraid. "Okay," she said, turning back to face Voss. "I'll help you." "You're sure?" She wasn't, not even close, but she nodded anyway. "What do we do first?" Voss stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. "First, we make sure Adrian thinks everything's normal. You go dark for a few days, tell him you're staying with a friend, visiting family, whatever keeps him off your back. In the meantime, I'll get you access to everything we've collected. You're going to see how deep this goes." "And then?" "Then we figure out how to take him apart." Sable nodded, her hands curling into fists at her sides. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than fear. It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was close. It was the feeling of a door opening, just a crack, and the possibility that she might be able to walk through it. "There's one more thing," Voss said, his voice quieter now. "Once we start this, there's no going back. Adrian's not going to stop, and the people protecting him won't either. You need to be ready for that." Sable met his eyes, and in that moment she understood exactly what he was offering. Not safety, not rescue, but a chance to fight back. It was the most dangerous gift anyone had ever given her. "I'm ready," she said. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the fear and the guilt and the exhaustion, she almost believed it. Sable didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch in Voss's apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the city outside. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Devereaux's face on that tablet screen, a man she'd never met but had helped kill with a careless word whispered to her husband over dinner. Around 4 in the morning, she heard movement in the other room. Voss appeared in the doorway, dressed in the same clothes from earlier, like he hadn't slept either. "Coffee?" he asked. She nodded. They sat at the kitchen counter in silence, two strangers bound together by the weight of what they were about to do. The coffee was strong, bitter, and Sable wrapped her hands around the mug like it was the only solid thing in the world. "I need to go back," she said finally. Voss looked up. "Back where?" "To the apartment, to get my things. If I just disappear, Adrian will know something's wrong." "He already knows something's wrong. You didn't come home last night." Sable's stomach twisted. She pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls, 12 text messages. She opened the thread with shaking hands. "Where are you?" "Sable, answer me. This isn't funny. You have 10 minutes to call me back or I'm filing a missing person report. I'm worried about you." The last message had come in 20 minutes ago. Sable set the phone down like it had burned her. "I told you," Voss said quietly. "He knows." "Then what am I supposed to do? Just never go back? Never see him again?" "That's exactly what you're supposed to do. My entire life is in that apartment. My clothes, my ID, my—" She stopped, realizing how pathetic it sounded. Her entire life fit in a single suitcase. Adrian had made sure of that. Voss studied her over the rim of his coffee mug. "If you go back, he'll lock you down. Tighter than before. And this time, you won't get out." "You don't know that." "I do." His voice was flat, certain. "I've seen how men like Adrian operate. They don't let assets walk away. And that's all you are to him, Sable. An asset." The word hit her like a fist. She wanted to argue, to defend the man she'd married, but the bruises on her wrists were still fresh, and the memory of his voice on those text messages, "I'm worried about you," felt like a noose tightening around her throat. "I need clothes," she said instead. I can't just wear this for the next week." Voss sighed, set down his mug, pulled out his phone. He typed something quickly, then looked back at her. "Give me your sizes. Someone will bring what you need." "Who?" "Someone I trust." "You mean someone who works for you?" "Same thing." Sable's jaw tightened. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity, it's logistics." Voss leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "You want to help me take Adrian down? Then you need to be functional. That means clothes, toiletries, and a clear head. We don't have time for you to spiral about a suitcase." The bluntness should have angered her, but instead it felt steadying. Voss wasn't coddling her, wasn't treating her like she was fragile. He was treating her like someone who had a job to do. "Fine," she said. "Medium, size 7 shoes. That's all I need." He nodded and went back to his phone. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Voss answered it and returned with 2 shopping bags, which he set on the counter without ceremony. Bathrooms down the hall. Take your time. Sable grabbed the bags and retreated. The bathroom was as minimalist as the rest of the apartment. White tile, frameless mirror, nothing personal. She showered, scrubbing away the previous night until her skin was raw, then dressed in the clothes someone had picked out for her. Dark jeans, a plain black sweater, sneakers that actually fit. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Without makeup, without the carefully constructed mask she wore at Belle Maison, she looked younger, smaller, more afraid. She took a breath and walked back out. Voss was sitting at the dining table with the tablet from last night, scrolling through documents. He glanced up when she entered. Better? Yeah. Good. We need to talk strategy. Sable sat across from him, and for the next 2 hours, Voss walked her through everything they had. Financial records showing money moving through shell companies. Contracts with clauses buried so deep no one would notice unless they knew what to look for. Emails between Adrian and people Sable had never heard of, producers, agents, fixers, all discussing problems that needed to be handled. And then there were the recordings. We've been surveilling Adrian's office for 6 months, Voss explained, pulling up an audio file. Legally gray, but admissible if we can tie it to a pattern of criminal behavior. He pressed play. Adrian's voice filled the room, smooth and controlled. Don't care how you do it. Just make sure Rivera doesn't make it to that deposition. If he talks, we're all fucked. Another voice, rougher, older. You want him gone or just scared? I want him silent. Permanently. The recording cut off. Sable felt bile rise in her throat. That was 4 days before Dante Rivera's car accident, Voss said. Sable pressed her hands flat against the table, trying to ground herself. How many people has he killed? Directly? We can prove 2. Devereaux and Rivera. But there are at least 4 others we suspect. People who threatened to expose him or got too close to the truth. And no one stopped him? He's protected. Voss swiped to another screen, this one showing a list of names. Politicians, judges, police captains. Adrian doesn't work alone. He's part of a network. They keep each other safe, bury each other's mistakes. That's why we need more than recordings. We need someone on the inside who can testify. Sable looked up sharply. You want me to testify? Eventually, but first, we need to build a case. And that means you need to go back. You just said... I said if you go back and disappear, he'll lock you down. But if you go back with a plan, if you play it right, you can buy us time. Sable shook her head. No, I can't. I can't go back there. You can. Voss's voice was steady, implacable. You've been doing it for 3 years. You know how to survive him. Surviving isn't the same as lying to his face while collecting evidence. You're right. It's harder. But it's the only way this works. Sable stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. She walked to the window, arms crossed, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at her chest. Behind her, Voss remained silent. What if he figures it out? She asked finally. Then you leave, immediately. I'll have people watching. 1 call and we pull you out. And if I don't get the chance to call? Voss didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. Then I come get you myself. Sable turned to look at him. There was no bravado in his expression, no false heroism, just a man stating a fact. Why are you doing this? She asked. I told you. Adrian's operation. No. Why are you helping me? You could take him down without me. You've got recordings, financials, connections. You don't need some waitress who fucked everything up. Voss leaned back in his chair, considering. You want the truth? Yes. Because you're the only person who's been inside his life and come out the other side still willing to fight. Everyone else he's broken down completely or killed. You're still here. That means something. Sable didn't know what to say to that. She turned back to the window, watching the river move below, dark and endless. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Both of them looked at it. Adrian's name flashed across the screen. You need to answer, Voss said. And say what? The truth. Or close enough to it. Sable picked up the phone, her hand trembling. She answered on the 4th ring. Where the hell are you? Adrian's voice was tight, controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. I'm sorry, she said, forcing her voice to stay calm. I stayed with Emily last night. I should have texted. Emily. He said the name like it tasted bad. You haven't talked to Emily in 6 months. I ran into her after work. We got drinks, and I had too much. I didn't want to drive. There was a long pause. Sable could hear him breathing on the other end, could picture him pacing their apartment, calculating whether to believe her. You could have called, he said finally. I know. I'm sorry. Where are you now? Sable's eyes flicked to Voss. He held up his phone, showing her an address. Still at her place, in Belmont. Come home. I will. I just need to... Now, Sable. The edge in his voice made her flinch. She closed her eyes. Okay, I'll be there in an hour. 30 minutes. He hung up. Sable set the phone down, her hands shaking so badly she had to grip the edge of the counter to steady them. I can't do this, she whispered. Yes, you can. Voss stood crossing to her. Listen to me. You go back. You apologize. You're sweet. You're sorry. You let him think he's got you under control again. And then, when he's not watching, you look for anything we can use. Documents, passwords, names we don't have yet. He'll know I'm lying. Probably, but he won't act on it right away. Men like Adrian don't burn their assets until they're absolutely sure. He'll watch you first, test you. And when he figures it out, you'll be gone before that happens. Sable wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this could work, that she could walk back into that apartment and not lose herself completely. But standing here, looking at Voss's steady gaze, she realized something worse. She had to believe it, because the alternative was spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for Adrian to find her and finish what he'd started. Okay, she said. What do I look for? Voss pulled out a small device, no bigger than a USB drive. This is a data cloner. If you can get access to his laptop for 5 minutes, plug this in. It'll copy everything, emails, files, browsing history. 5 minutes? Adrian never leaves his laptop unattended. Then make him. Spill something. Start a fight. I don't care. Just get it done. Sable took the device, slipping it into her pocket. It felt impossibly heavy. There's one more thing. Voss's voice dropped. If you find anything about someone named Elliot Cross, I need to know immediately. Who's that? A fixer. Adrian uses him for the jobs he can't tie back to himself. If Cross is involved in anything current, it means Adrian's planning something big. Sable nodded, committing the name to memory. I'll drive you to Belmont, Voss said. You can call an Uber from there, make it look legitimate. Okay? 20 minutes later, Sable stood on a quiet residential street, watching Voss's car disappear around the corner. Her phone was in her hand, the Uber app open, and she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with no way to tell how far the drop was. She requested the ride. The apartment was on the 15th floor of a building overlooking downtown Nashville. Sable had loved it when they first moved in. The view, the space, the way the light came through the windows in the morning. Now it felt like a cage with a view. She used her key to unlock the door and stepped inside. Adrian was standing in the living room, still dressed in his suit from work. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. Hey, Sable said, closing the door behind her. He didn't respond, just looked at her. I'm sorry, she continued, setting her purse on the console table. I should have called. It was stupid. It was more than stupid. His voice was calm, which was worse than anger. You disappeared for 12 hours. Didn't answer your phone. Didn't tell me where you were. I know, I'm sorry. And you expect me to believe you were just at Emily's? I was. You can call her if you want. Adrian's jaw tightened. I did. She didn't answer. Sable's heart dropped. She forced herself to stay calm, to not let the panic show on her face. She's probably at work. Right. Adrian walked toward her slowly, deliberately. So let me get this straight. You ran into a friend you haven't seen in months, had too much to drink, and decided to stay over without telling your husband. That's your story? Yes. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, suffocating. You're lying. I'm not. His hand moved so fast she didn't see it coming. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Don't insult me, Sable. I've been doing this too long. Doing what? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Reading people, finding out when they're hiding something. His grip tightened. Where were you really? I told you. Where? The pressure on her jaw was excruciating. Sable's eyes watered, but she didn't pull away. Pulling away would confirm everything he suspected. Emily's, she said again. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for cracks. Then, abruptly, he let go. Sable stumbled back, catching herself against the wall. Fine, he said, smoothing his tie. But if I find out you're lying, we're going to have a very different conversation. He walked past her toward the bedroom, leaving her standing in the hallway with her heart hammering against her ribs. Sable waited until she heard the shower turn on. Then she moved quickly, pulling out her phone and texting Voss. I'm in. He's suspicious, but not certain. The response came back immediately. Be careful. Don't push. She pocketed her phone and walked into the kitchen, trying to calm her breathing. Her hands were shaking again, and she pressed them flat against the counter, counting to 10. This was insane. She was insane. What the hell was she doing, walking back into this apartment, lying to a man who'd orchestrated murders, thinking she could outsmart him? But then she thought about Marcus Devereaux again, about Clara Mendoza, about all the people Adrian had destroyed while she'd stood by and watched. She couldn't undo what she'd done, but maybe, just maybe, she could stop him from doing it again. The next 3 days were a carefully choreographed performance. Sable went to work at Belle Maison, smiled at customers, poured wine, and listened. At home, she was the perfect wife, attentive, apologetic, quiet. Adrian watched her constantly, his gaze tracking her every movement, but he didn't confront her again. On the 4th day, he left his laptop on the kitchen counter while he took a call in his office. Sable stared at it, her pulse racing. This was it. 5 minutes. That's all she needed. She glanced toward the office. The door was closed, Adrian's voice a low murmur on the other side. She pulled the data cloner from her pocket and approached the laptop like it might explode. Her hands were sweating. She wiped them on her jeans and flipped the laptop open. It was locked, password protected. Of course it was. She tried his birthday. Incorrect. Their anniversary. Incorrect. Her birthday. Incorrect. Shit, she whispered. She could hear Adrian's voice getting louder. He was wrapping up the call. Think. What would Adrian use as a password? Something he'd never forget but no one else would guess. And then it hit her. She typed, Virelli. 2019, the year they'd gotten married, combined with her maiden name. The laptop unlocked. Sable's hands shook as she plugged in the data cloner. A progress bar appeared on the screen. Copying files. 3 minutes remaining. Adrian's voice stopped. She heard his footsteps. Fuck, she breathed. She minimized the progress window and opened a random folder, trying to look casual. The footsteps got closer. The office door opened. Sable? Yeah? She didn't turn around. What are you doing? Looking up a recipe. My phone's dead. Adrian appeared in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to the laptop. On my computer? Mine's in the bedroom. I didn't think you'd mind. He walked toward her slowly. Sable's heart was a drum beating in her ears. Behind the fake window she'd opened, the real progress bar ticked upward. 2 minutes remaining. What recipe? Adrian asked. That pasta thing you like. With the lemon. He leaned over her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. Show me. Sable's mind went blank. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. She clicked on a random food blog, praying it would load fast enough. The page appeared. Some kind of chicken dish. Not pasta, not lemon. Wrong. That's chicken, Adrian said. I know. I was comparing. The lie came out smooth, automatic. I wanted to see if I could do a chicken version too. 1 minute remaining. Adrian straightened, studying her. You're acting strange. I'm not. You are. Ever since that night you stayed at Emily's. I told you. I'm sorry about... I called her again, Adrian interrupted. She finally answered. Sable's blood turned to ice. And you know what she said? Adrian's voice was soft, dangerous. She said she hasn't seen you in 8 months. 30 seconds. Sable stood slowly, turning to face him. She's confused. We got drinks at... Stop lying! Adrian's hand shot out, slamming the laptop closed. I know you weren't with her, so I'm going to ask you one more time. Where were you? The data cloner was still plugged into the laptop. If he opened it, if he saw it, this was over. I was walking, Sable said, her voice shaking. I needed space. I couldn't come home yet, so I walked around downtown for a few hours and then slept in my car. Why? Because I'm tired, Adrian. I'm tired of being watched all the time, of feeling like I can't breathe without you asking me why. It was the truth, or close enough to it. And maybe that's why it landed. Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like hurt flickering across his face. You could have told me that. No, I couldn't. Every time I try to tell you how I feel, you make it about something else. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he opened the laptop again. Sable's heart stopped, but the progress bar was gone. The cloner had finished. All that remained on the screen was the chicken recipe she'd pulled up. Adrian scanned the page, then closed the laptop again. I'm going to the office. We'll talk about this later. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out without another word. The moment the door closed, Sable collapsed against the counter, gasping for air. Her whole body was shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system like a wave. She pulled the data cloner from the laptop and stared at it. The tiny light on the side blinked green. Transfer complete. Sable nearly laughed. She'd done it. She'd actually fucking done it. She texted Voss, got it. His response came back within seconds. Get out. Now. Sable didn't hesitate. She grabbed her purse, the data cloner, and walked out of the apartment without looking back. She met Voss at a coffee shop in East Nashville, sliding the device across the table like it was contraband. You're sure it copied everything? She asked. Voss plugged it into his own laptop, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Yeah, emails, files, search history. Jesus, Sable, this is everything. She watched him scroll through Adrian's emails, her stomach churning. There were hundreds of them, thousands maybe. Communications with people she'd never heard of, coded language that didn't make sense. And then Voss stopped, his face going pale. What? Sable asked. He turned the laptop toward her. On the screen was an email from 3 days ago. The subject line read, Re the Varelli problem. Sable's hands went numb. She leaned forward, reading. Adrian, understand your concern, but eliminating the asset now would raise too many questions. Suggest staged accident within the next 2 weeks. Make it look natural. Cross is standing by. M. Sable read it twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. He's going to kill me, she whispered. Voss closed the laptop. Not if we move first. 2 weeks. He's giving himself 2 weeks. Then we have less than that to finish this. Sable looked up at him, and for the first time she felt something crack inside her. The last fragile piece of the person she'd been before all of this. The girl who'd believed Adrian loved her. The girl who thought she could survive by staying small and quiet. That girl was gone. What do we need to do? She asked, and her voice was steady now, cold. Voss met her eyes. We go to war. Going to war turned out to mean sitting in a cramped office above a pawn shop in East Nashville, staring at computer screens until Sable's eyes burned and her back ached from the cheap chair Voss had given her. 3 days had passed since she'd walked out of the apartment. 3 days of combing through Adrian's emails, cross-referencing names with financial records, building a timeline of every deal, every threat, every body that had piled up in his wake. Voss worked across from her, barely speaking except to ask questions or point out connections she'd missed. There was a third person now, too, a woman named Maya Chen who'd shown up on day 2 with a laptop and an FBI credentials case that she set on the desk like a warning. I'm not officially here, Maya had said when Voss introduced them. As far as my bosses know, I'm on vacation, but I've been tracking Adrian Cade for 18 months, and if you two have what you say you have, I want in. Sable had looked at Voss, who'd nodded once. That was apparently all the vetting required. Now Maya sat to Sable's left, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she built what she called the framework, a prosecutable case that could survive the inevitable assault from Adrian's lawyers. We've got him on money laundering, Maya said, not looking up from her screen. Multiple counts. The contracts alone are enough to put him away for 15 years. But not for murder, Sable said. Maya glanced at her. No, not yet. The recordings are circumstantial. We need something concrete. A witness who can testify to direct involvement. What about Elliot Cross? Voss asked. He's a ghost. No address, no known associates, nothing in any database. If Cross exists, he's been scrubbed clean. Sable leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. So we have financial crimes, but not the murders. That's not enough. It's enough to start, Maya said. Once Adrian's in custody, people will talk. They always do. And if they don't? Maya's expression hardened. Then he does 15 years instead of life. Either way, he's done. It should have felt like progress. It should have felt like winning. But Sable couldn't shake the image of that email, staged accident within the next 2 weeks, and the certainty that somewhere, right now, Elliot Cross was preparing to make her disappear. Her phone buzzed. She looked down and felt her stomach drop. Adrian. She hadn't spoken to him since walking out. Hadn't answered his calls. Hadn't responded to his texts. She'd blocked him on everything, changed her number, vanished as completely as she could. But somehow, he'd found her again. The message was simple. We need to talk. Voss saw her face. What is it? She held up the phone. Don't respond, he said immediately. I'm not planning to. But even as she said it, another message came through. I know about Voss. I know what you're doing. You have until midnight to come home, or I go to the police and tell them you've been stealing from Belle Maison for months. They'll believe me, Sable. You know they will. Sable's hand started shaking. He's threatening to frame me. Maya looked up sharply. For what? Theft from the restaurant. Can he prove it? He doesn't have to. He's got lawyers, connections, money. He'll manufacture the evidence and everyone will believe him because I'm just a waitress and he's Adrian fucking Cade. Voss stood, pacing to the window. He's bluffing. If he had real leverage, he wouldn't be texting you. He'd just do it. Or he's giving me a chance to come back quietly before he destroys me publicly. So let him try, Maya said. We've got enough to arrest him tomorrow. He files a false police report, we bury him deeper. But Sable was already shaking her head. You don't understand. Adrian doesn't make empty threats. If he says he'll do something, he does it. And if I don't show up tonight, he'll ruin me just to prove he can. Then don't show up, Voss said flatly. Stay here. We move faster. Get the arrest warrant pushed through tonight instead of tomorrow. Can you do that? Maya hesitated. Maybe, if I call in favors. But it's risky. We're already operating outside official channels. Sable looked down at her phone again. Another message. 11 hours, Sable. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She thought about Adrian sitting in their apartment, calm and controlled, probably sipping scotch while he waited for her to cave. He knew her too well, knew exactly which buttons to press to make her doubt herself, to make her afraid. But he didn't know about the data cloner, didn't know they had his emails, his financials, everything. He thought she was still just the frightened girl he'd married, the one who'd do anything to avoid confrontation. I want to meet him, Sable said. Both Voss and Maya turned to stare at her. Absolutely not, Voss said. I'm serious. He wants to talk. Let's talk. I'll wear a wire, record everything he says. Maybe he'll slip up, admit to something we can use. Or he'll kill you the second you walk through that door, Voss shot back. Not if you're listening. Not if you're close enough to get me out if things go wrong. Maya was already shaking her head. This is a terrible idea. We don't use civilians as bait. I'm not bait. I'm the only person who can get close enough to make him talk. Sable stood, meeting Voss's eyes. You said you needed concrete evidence. Let me get it for you. Not like this. Then how? Her voice rose. You want to wait for someone else to flip? For Cross to surface? That could take months, and Adrian's timeline is 2 weeks. I don't have months. The room went silent. Outside, Nashville traffic hummed and honked, oblivious to the war being planned 3 stories above the street. Finally, Maya spoke. If we do this, and I mean if, we do it my way. Full surveillance, backup team, panic button that goes straight to my phone, and the second things go sideways, we pull you out, non-negotiable. Sable nodded. Okay. This is insane, Voss muttered, but he didn't argue further. They spent the next 6 hours preparing. Maya called in a contact who brought equipment, a wire so small it fit inside the button of Sable's shirt, a panic device disguised as a ring. They briefed her on what to say, what to avoid, how to keep Adrian talking without making him suspicious. Don't push, Maya instructed. Let him lead the conversation. Men like Adrian love to explain themselves, to justify their actions. Give him space to do that. And if he asks about the laptop, Sable asked, play dumb. You looked up a recipe, that's it. He has no proof you took anything. Voss was quieter. his jaw tight as he watched the tech specialist fit Sable with the wire. When the others stepped away to test the equipment, he pulled her aside. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." "No, you really don't. We can find another way." Sable met his eyes. "There is no other way. You know it, and I know it. Adrian's too careful, too protected. This is the only shot we have." Voss looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just nodded. "If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out. Promise me." "I promise." At 11:30, Sable stood outside her apartment building, staring up at the 15th floor. The lights were on. Adrian was waiting. Through her earpiece, Maya's voice was calm and steady. "We're in position. 2 units in the lobby, 1 on your floor. Voss is in the stairwell. You're not alone." Sable touched the ring on her finger, the panic button. One twist, and this whole thing would end. She walked inside. The elevator ride felt like descending into water, pressure building with each floor. When the doors opened on 15, she half expected to see Adrian standing there, but the hallway was empty. She walked to the door and used her key. Adrian was sitting on the couch, exactly as she'd pictured him. Scotch in hand, posture relaxed, like they were about to have a pleasant conversation about the weather. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me much choice." "There's always a choice, Sable. You just finally made the right one." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat, keeping her hands folded in her lap so they wouldn't shake. Adrian studied her for a long moment. "You look different. I haven't been sleeping well." "I imagine not. Guilty conscience will do that." Sable's pulse jumped, but she kept her face neutral. "Guilty of what?" "I think you know." "I really don't, Adrian. You sent me cryptic threats and demanded I come home, so here I am. What do you want?" He took a slow sip of his drink, then set the glass down with deliberate care. "I want to know who Lucien Voss is to you." There it was. Direct, no pretense. "He's no one," Sable said. "I serve him at the restaurant sometimes." "Don't lie to me." Adrian's voice stayed calm, but something cold slipped into his eyes. "I had someone check the security footage from Belle Maison. You left with him that night. Got into his car. Disappeared for 12 hours. Sable's mind raced. "He offered me a ride. I was upset, and he was being nice." "Lucien Voss doesn't do nice. He does transactions. So what did you give him?" "Nothing. We talked. That's all." "About what?" "About the restaurant. About Nashville. Small talk." Adrian stood slowly, crossing to the window. "You're still lying, and honestly, Sable, it's insulting. I've spent 3 years teaching you how to read people, how to spot deception. Did you really think I wouldn't see through this?" In her ear, Maya's voice, "Stay calm. Keep him talking." "I'm not lying," Sable said. "I went for a drive with someone from the restaurant because I needed space. That's not a crime." "No, but corporate espionage is." Adrian turned to face her. "That's what this is, isn't it? Voss got to you, convinced you to spy on me, to steal information." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because I've been thinking about that night you were on my laptop, the recipe you were supposedly looking up, and I started wondering, what if it wasn't about the recipe at all?" Sable's throat went dry. "I don't know what you mean." Adrian walked toward her slowly, each step measured. "I had my IT guy check the computer. He found something interesting, a program running in the background that day. A data transfer." The room tilted. Sable gripped the arms of the chair, trying to keep her breathing steady. "Someone copied my entire hard drive." "Shit," Adrian continued. "Every file, every email, every document, and the timestamp matches exactly when you were sitting at that computer." In her ear, "Sable, abort, get out now." But she couldn't move, couldn't speak, because Adrian was standing right in front of her now, close enough that she could see the fury barely contained beneath his calm exterior. "So I'm going to ask you one more time," he said softly. "What did you give Lucien Voss?" Sable's hand moved toward the ring, ready to twist it, but Adrian was faster. He grabbed her wrist, his grip crushing. "I don't think so." He ripped the ring off her finger and threw it across the room. Then he reached for her shirt, tearing the button free. The wire came with it, small and damning. Adrian held it up, his expression shifting from anger to something worse. Betrayal. "You wore a wire into our home. Adrian, you were going to record me, turn me into..." Who? The FBI? He laughed, sharp and bitter. Jesus Christ, Sable, I knew you were stupid, but this? The door burst open. Voss came through first, gun drawn, followed by two officers in tactical gear. They moved fast, professional, shouting for Adrian to get on the ground. But Adrian didn't move. He just looked at Sable, still holding the wire in his hand. You have no idea what you've done, he said quietly. Then he dropped the wire and raised his hands. The arrest happened quickly. They cuffed Adrian, read him his rights, led him toward the door. He didn't resist, didn't fight. Just kept his eyes on Sable the entire time, until the officers finally forced him out into the hallway. Maya appeared in the doorway, her face tight. Are you hurt? Sable shook her head, but her whole body was trembling. Voss crossed to her, pulling her to her feet. It's over, he said. You did it. But Sable couldn't shake the look in Adrian's eyes. The certainty. The warning. We need to go, Maya said. Now. We'll debrief at the field office. They took her downstairs into an unmarked car. Sable sat in the back seat, staring out the window as they drove through Nashville. The city looked different now, smaller somehow. Or maybe she was just seeing it clearly for the first time. At the FBI field office, they put her in a conference room with coffee she didn't drink and questions she answered mechanically. What had Adrian said? What had he admitted to? Had he made any threats? She told them everything, but it felt hollow. Because Adrian hadn't admitted to anything. He'd been too smart for that. Even caught, even facing arrest, he'd given them nothing concrete. After 2 hours, Maya stepped out to make a call. Voss sat across from Sable, his expression unreadable. You okay? He asked. I don't know. You should be. This is what we wanted. Adrian's in custody. We've got the evidence. He's not getting out of this. But even as he said it, Sable could hear the doubt in his voice. Maya came back in, her face pale. She set her phone on the table. We have a problem. Voss straightened. What kind of problem? Adrian's lawyers just filed a motion claiming illegal search and seizure. They're arguing that the data on his laptop was obtained without a warrant, which makes it inadmissible. That's bullshit, Voss said. Sable had access to the apartment. It's not illegal if... She was acting as an agent of law enforcement, Maya interrupted, which means we needed a warrant, and we didn't have one. The words settled over the room like ash. Sable stared at Maya, trying to understand what she was saying. So what does that mean? She asked. Maya sat down heavily. It means every piece of evidence we pulled from that laptop could be thrown out. The emails, the financial records, the contracts, all of it. But we still have the recordings, Voss said, from his office, which are also legally questionable. We didn't have a warrant for those either. So what do we have? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Not enough. Without the laptop data, we can prove money laundering. Maybe. But the murders, the conspiracy, we've got nothing concrete. Sable felt the floor drop out from under her. You're saying he's going to walk. I'm saying his lawyers are good, really good, and they're going to tear apart every piece of evidence we have until there's nothing left. How long until he's released? 72 hours. Maybe less if the judge agrees with the motion. Sable stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. No, that's not... We had him. We had everything. We had evidence obtained illegally, Maya said, and her voice was full of regret. I should have seen this coming, should have done this by the book. The book would have taken months. Adrian would have killed me by then. I know. But now he's going to walk, and when he does, he's going to come after all of us. Voss's jaw was tight. Then we don't let him walk. We find something else. Something clean. Like what? We've been through everything. There's nothing. There's always something. Voss turned to Sable. You lived with him for 3 years. Think. What are we missing? Sable's mind was spinning, searching desperately for anything, any detail she might have overlooked. And then, like a light cutting through fog, she remembered. The storage unit, she said. Both Maya and Voss looked at her. Adrian has a storage unit in East Nashville. He keeps boxes there, old files. He told me it was just junk from before we got married, but he goes there sometimes, late at night. Maya leaned forward. Do you know the address? No, but it'll be in his records somewhere. Rental agreements, payment history. If it's in his name, we can get a warrant, Maya said, already reaching for her phone. Storage units don't have the same privacy protections as a home. Voss was nodding. If he's keeping physical evidence there, documents, burner phones, anything, it could be clean, usable. How fast can you move on this? Sable asked. Maya was already dialing. Give me 2 hours. Those 2 hours felt like years. Sable paced the conference room while Voss made calls and Maya worked her contacts inside the bureau. They ordered food no one ate, drank coffee that went cold, waited for word that felt like it might never come. Finally, at 3 a.m, Maya's phone rang. She answered, listened, then looked up with something that might have been hope. We've got the warrant. Let's go. The storage facility was on the outskirts of East Nashville, a squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence. They arrived in a convoy, Maya's car, 2 FBI vans, and a bolt cutter for the lock. Adrian's unit was on the second floor, number 237. Maya cut the lock while Voss and Sable stood back, watching. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling. Start documenting everything, Maya instructed her team. Photos first, then we open them one by one. The agents moved in with cameras and gloves. Sable stayed in the doorway, her heart pounding. The first box contained files, contracts, legal documents, nothing obviously incriminating. The second was the same. The third. And then one of the agents opened a box near the back and went very still. Agent Chen, he said quietly, you need to see this. Maya crossed to him. Sable watched her face go pale. What is it? Voss asked. Maya didn't answer. She just reached into the box and pulled out a phone, then another, and another. 7 burner phones, each tagged with a date. Bag them, Maya said, her voice shaking. All of them. But that wasn't all. In the box beneath the phones, they found something else. A ledger. Handwritten entries, dates and names and dollar amounts. And in the margins, notes in Adrian's handwriting. Devereaux. Handled. Cross-confirmed. Rivera, vehicle tampered. No witnesses. Mendoza, contract voided. Blackmail material secured. Sable felt like she was going to be sick. She turned away, pressing her hand against the wall. This is it, Maya said, and her voice was full of something Sable hadn't heard before. Certainty. This is everything we need. They processed the storage unit for 3 more hours, documenting every box, every file, every piece of evidence that Adrian had been stupid enough or arrogant enough to keep. By the time the sun came up, they had enough to bury him 10 times over. Maya drove Sable back to Voss's apartment. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. When they arrived, Voss walked Sable to the door. You should try to sleep, he said. I don't think I can. Try anyway. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Sable looked at him, seeing the exhaustion in his face that probably mirrored her own. Do you think he knew that we'd find the storage unit? I don't know, maybe. Adrian's always 3 steps ahead. Then why keep the evidence? Insurance, leverage, or maybe he just got sloppy. Voss shrugged. Either way, it doesn't matter now. We've got him. But later, lying on the couch as dawn light filtered through the windows, Sable couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that they'd missed something, that Adrian's warning, you have no idea what you've done, meant more than just empty threats. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. Male, calm, professional. Sable Varelli? Who is this? My name is Elliot Cross. I believe your husband mentioned me. Sable's blood turned to ice. She sat up, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. I'm calling as a courtesy, Cross continued, to let you know that Mr. Cade has activated a contingency plan. I've been authorized to proceed with our original arrangement. What arrangement? The one involving your accident. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. I wanted to give you a chance to reconsider your cooperation with law enforcement. If you withdraw your statement and destroy the evidence you've collected, Mr. Cade is willing to call this off. He's in custody. He can't... Mr. Cade has resources you can't imagine, Mrs. Varelli. Prison is temporary. But what I do is permanent. Sable's mind raced. If you touch me, the FBI... The FBI can't protect you. Not from me. Not from what's coming. Cross paused. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the original timeline resumes, and I promise you, it won't be pleasant." The line went dead. Sable sat there, staring at the phone, her entire body numb. Then she stood and walked to where Voss was sleeping in the bedroom. She knocked on the door. "We have a problem." When she told him about the call, Voss's expression went dark. He immediately called Maya, who arrived 30 minutes later looking like she hadn't slept either. "Cross is a professional," Maya said grimly. "If Adrian activated him, he's not bluffing. We need to move you to a safe house immediately." "For how long?" "Until this is over. Until Adrian's convicted and Cross has no reason to come after you. That could be months." "I know." Sable looked between them, seeing the truth neither wanted to say out loud. Even with all the evidence they'd found, even with Adrian in custody, he still had power, still had reach, and he was willing to use it to destroy anyone who stood against him. "There has to be another way," she said. "There isn't," Voss said flatly. "You go into protection, or you die. Those are the options." Sable walked to the window, staring out at Nashville one more time, the city she'd tried so hard to survive in, the city that had nearly killed her. And then, standing there with the morning light washing over her face, she made a decision. "No," she said quietly. Maya and Voss exchanged glances. "No what?" Maya asked. Sable turned to face them. "I'm not hiding. I'm not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder waiting for some killer to decide I'm worth the trouble. If Adrian wants a war, then let's finish it. Sable, I mean it. We have the evidence. We have his ledger, his phones, everything. So let's use it. Let's make this so public, so undeniable, that even Cross won't be able to touch me without bringing down everyone connected to Adrian." Voss was already shaking his head. "That's suicide." "No. Hiding is suicide. At least this way, I go out fighting." Maya looked at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "What did you have in mind?" And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Sable smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd finally stopped running and decided to stand her ground. "There's a gala next week," she said, "the Nashville Music Awards. Adrian was supposed to receive an award for his legal work in the industry. Every major player in the city will be there. Press, cameras, live broadcast." "You want to expose him publicly," Voss said. "I want to burn his entire world down in front of everyone he's ever tried to impress." Maya was quiet, thinking. Then, "It could work. If we coordinate with the prosecutor, get the arrest timed right, we could make this the biggest scandal Nashville's ever seen. And if Cross comes after me, then we'll be ready for him too." Sable looked at both of them, these two people who'd risked everything to help her, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope. Not yet. But something close to it. The feeling of taking control of her own story for the first time in 3 years. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." Outside, the sun continued to rise over Nashville, indifferent to the war being declared in a small apartment above the city. But inside, 3 people began planning the kind of ending that would make sure Adrian Cade's name was never spoken without discussed again. And somewhere in the city, Elliot Cross checked his watch and began counting down the hours until his contract came due. The clock was ticking, and this time, Sable Varelli wasn't running from it. She was running straight toward it, with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The week before the gala moved like a countdown to an execution. Sable barely slept, barely ate, existing in a state of hypervigilance that made every sound feel like a threat, and every shadow look like Elliot Cross coming to finish the job. Maya had assigned her a protection detail, 2 agents in rotating shifts who stood outside Voss's apartment and followed her everywhere she went. Their presence should have been reassuring, but instead it just reminded her that somewhere out there, a professional killer was watching, waiting for the right moment. On day 3, they found the first sign that Cross wasn't just a voice on the phone. Sable was leaving a coffee shop in Germantown, flanked by her protection detail, when she noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, idling across the street. It had been there when they'd arrived 30 minutes earlier, and it was still there now. "Agent Morris," she said quietly to the man on her left. "That car." Morris followed her gaze, his hand moving instinctively toward his holster. "Stay close." They walked quickly toward their vehicle, Morris radiating the kind of controlled tension that came from years of training. The sedan didn't move. Didn't follow, just sat there, engine running as they pulled away. But when they were 2 blocks gone, Sable looked back and saw the sedan merge into traffic behind them, maintaining perfect distance. "We've got a tail," the second agent, Reynolds, said from the driver's seat. Morris was already on his radio, calling it in. "This is Unit 7. We have a possible hostile vehicle in pursuit. Black Audi A6, license plate Tango Kilo 7, 392. Requesting backup." The sedan followed them for 6 blocks, then smoothly peeled off and disappeared down a side street. When they got back to the apartment, Maya was waiting, her expression grim. "We ran the plates," she said. "Stolen. Reported missing 3 days ago from a lot in Franklin." "So it was Cross," Sable said. "Probably. Or someone working for him." Maya's jaw was tight. "He's establishing a pattern, letting you know he's there. It's psychological warfare." "It's working." Voss appeared from the kitchen. Carrying coffee, he sat down with more force than necessary. "We should move the timeline up. Do this tonight, tomorrow, get it done before Cross makes his move." "We can't," Maya said. "The gala is our best shot. Maximum exposure, maximum protection. If we try to do this any other way, Adrian's lawyers will bury us. And if Cross gets to her before then, he won't. We're doubling security, adding more units. Sable doesn't leave this building unless absolutely necessary." Sable listened to them argue about her life like she wasn't sitting right there and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was what it meant to be a target, to have your existence reduced to tactical decisions made by other people. "I want a gun," she said. They both stopped talking and looked at her. "No," Maya said immediately. "Why not? You said Cross is a professional. If he gets past your agents, I should be able to defend myself." "You don't have training. You'd be more likely to shoot yourself than him." "Then train me." Voss was shaking his head. "Sable, I'm not going to just sit here helpless. If Cross comes for me, I want to be able to fight back." The room went quiet. Finally, Voss stood and walked to a cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it and pulled out a handgun. Small, compact, designed for concealment. "This is a Glock 43, he said, checking the chamber to ensure it was empty. 9mm, 6 rounds, point and shoot. He handed it to her. The weight was heavier than Sable expected. She held it carefully, feeling the cold metal against her palm. "Safety's here," Voss continued, showing her. "Trigger's got a safety built in. You pull, it fires. No second chances." Maya looked like she wanted to protest, but she didn't. Maybe she understood that giving Sable this small measure of control was the only thing keeping her from completely falling apart. Voss spent the next hour teaching her the basics. How to hold it, how to aim, how to breathe through the recoil. They couldn't fire it in the apartment, but he walked her through the motions until her hand stopped shaking quite so badly. "You probably won't need it," he said when they finished. "But if you do, don't hesitate. Center mass. Keep firing until the threat stops moving." Sable nodded, sliding the gun into the holster Voss provided. It sat against her ribs, a constant weight that reminded her she was living in a world where she might actually have to kill someone to survive. That night, she dreamed about Marcus Devereaux. In the dream, he was sitting in his car and she was standing outside, watching. He looked at her through the window, not angry, not accusatory, just tired. Then the gunshot came and Sable woke up gasping, her shirt soaked with sweat. She got up and walked to the window, staring out at the Nashville skyline. Somewhere out there, Adrian was sitting in a cell, probably sleeping peacefully, confident that his lawyers would get him out and his hired killer would clean up the mess. And somewhere else, Elliot Cross was preparing. Sable touched the gun at her side, feeling its outline through her shirt. 3 more days. The day before the gala, Maya brought in someone new. A woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor introduced herself as Special Agent Victoria Reeves, Hostage Rescue Team. "I'll be running point security tomorrow night," Reeves said, spreading blueprints of the gala venue across the table. 12 agents inside, 8 outside, Overwatch team on the roof. We're treating this like a presidential visit. "And if Cross still gets through?" Sable asked. Reeves looked at her directly. "Then I personally put him down. That's what I'm here for." The certainty in her voice should have been comforting, but Sable had learned not to trust certainty. Adrian had been certain he'd never get caught. She'd been certain she could survive by staying quiet. Certainty meant nothing. "What about Adrian?" Voss asked. "What's his status?" Still in custody, Maya said. His lawyers filed another motion this morning arguing unlawful detention, but the judge denied it. He's not getting out before the gala. But he still has access to a phone, Reeves added. We've been monitoring his calls. He's talking to his legal team, making arrangements. Nothing overtly incriminating, but enough to know he's planning something. Like what? That's what we're trying to figure out. Sable studied the blueprints, memorizing the layout. The gala was being held at the Schermerhorn Symphony Center, a massive venue with multiple entrances, balconies, and backstage areas. Too many places for something to go wrong. I want to see it, she said. The venue. I need to walk through it, know where everything is. Reeves hesitated, then nodded. We'll do a security sweep this afternoon. You can come. They arrived at the Schermerhorn at 4 p.m., accompanied by half a dozen agents who moved through the building like ghosts, checking sightlines and exit routes. Sable walked the main hall, feeling the weight of the empty space. Tomorrow night it would be filled with Nashville's elite. Producers, artists, lawyers, politicians. All of them dressed in formal wear, drinking champagne, celebrating success. And somewhere among them, she would stand and watch Adrian's world burn. The stage is here, Reeves said, pointing. We'll have agents positioned in the wings, in the tech booth, and scattered throughout the audience. When the time comes, they'll move on my signal. When exactly is the time? Sable asked. Right after his award presentation. He'll be on stage, cameras on him. That's when we release the evidence to the media and execute the arrest. So he gets his moment of glory before it all comes down. Unfortunately, yes, but that's what makes it effective. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. Sable walked onto the stage, looking out at the rows of empty seats. Tomorrow they'd be full of people watching her destroy a man she'd once loved, or thought she'd loved. It was hard to remember now which parts of their relationship had been real and which had been carefully constructed manipulation. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She answered, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Hello, Mrs. Varelli. Elliot Cross's voice was as calm as before. Enjoying the venue tour? Sable's blood went cold. She looked around, searching the balconies, the tech booth, anywhere a person might hide with a view of the stage. How are you, E? I'm very good at my job. That's what Mr. Cade pays me for. Cross paused. I wanted to remind you that my offer still stands. Withdraw your cooperation, and this all goes away. Go to hell. That's unfortunate. I was hoping you'd be reasonable. She could hear something that might have been genuine regret in his voice. For what it's worth, I take no pleasure in this. But a contract is a contract. Then you're going to have to fulfill it in front of a dozen FBI agents and God knows how many cameras. I'm aware of the security arrangements. They won't be a problem. The confidence in his voice made her skin crawl. You're bluffing. Am I? Tell me, Mrs. Varelli, how many exits are in that building? How many ways in and out? How many people will be there tomorrow night, any one of whom could be me? He let the questions hang. Your protection detail is good, but I'm better. We'll see. Yes, we will. Cross paused. One more thing. There's someone you should know about, someone close to your investigation who's been feeding information to Mr. Cade. I thought you'd want to know that before tomorrow. Sable's throat tightened. Who? If I told you, where would be the fun in that? But I promise you'll figure it out, probably right before it's too late. He sounded almost amused. Good luck tomorrow, Mrs. Varelli. You're going to need it. The line went dead. Sable stood there, phone in hand, her mind racing. Someone on the inside was working for Adrian, someone close to the investigation. She turned to find Reeves watching her from the wings. Everything okay? That was Cross. Reeves's expression hardened. What did he say? That he knows about the security arrangements, and that someone on our team is feeding information to Adrian. That's bullshit. Everyone here has been vetted. Maybe, but he knew I was here. Right now, in this building. Sable walked toward her. How did he know that? Reeves pulled out her radio. All units, report in. I need a full security sweep of this venue, and I need it 5 minutes ago. The agents moved quickly, spreading throughout the building. Sable stood on the stage watching them work, trying to process what Cross had told her. Someone close to the investigation. Someone she'd been working with for days. Voss appeared at her side. What's going on? Cross called. He said someone's been feeding Adrian information. Voss's jaw tightened. Did he say who? No. But he wanted me to know, wanted me to start doubting everyone around me. That's the point. He's trying to fracture our trust, make us paranoid. Well, it's working. They stood in silence, watching the agent search. After 20 minutes, Reeves returned, shaking her head. Buildings clear, no signs of surveillance equipment, no unauthorized access. Then how did he know? He could have been watching from outside, could have hacked into security cameras, or… Reeves hesitated. Or what? Or he's telling the truth about having someone on the inside. Sable looked around at the agents, the people who were supposed to be protecting her, and felt the trust she'd been building crumble. Any one of them could be Cross's source. Any one of them could be waiting for the right moment to let him through. That night, back at the apartment, she couldn't shake the paranoia. She sat at the table with Voss and Maya, studying their faces, looking for tells. Maya had been nothing but professional since day one, but she'd also been the one making all the tactical decisions, positioning Sable exactly where she needed to be. Voss had saved her life, given her shelter, risked everything to take Adrian down. But he was also part of the same world Adrian operated in. He'd admitted as much. Anyone could be lying. We need to talk about tomorrow, Maya said, pulling out her tablet. Final timeline. She walked them through it again. The gala started at 7. Adrian's award presentation was scheduled for 9:30. At 9:45, the evidence would go live, uploaded to every major news outlet simultaneously. At 9:50, federal marshals would take Adrian into custody on stage. Where will I be? Sable asked. In the audience. Front row, surrounded by agents. When the arrest happens, we extract you immediately and take you to a secure location. And Cross? If he makes a move, we'll be ready. But Sable could see the doubt in Maya's eyes. Cross was a professional who'd evaded law enforcement for years. No one really believed a couple dozen agents would be enough to stop him if he decided to act. I want to be the one who releases the evidence, Sable said suddenly. Maya looked up sharply. What? Tomorrow night, when it's time. I want to be the one who hits send. That's not… We have people who… I don't care. This is my life Adrian tried to destroy. I should be the one who destroys his. Maya and Voss exchanged glances. It's dangerous, Voss said. It puts you in the spotlight. I'm already in the spotlight. Cross already knows where I'll be. At least this way I get to do something instead of just sitting there waiting to be killed. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, we'll set it up. But the second the upload is complete, we're moving you out. No arguments. Deal. That night, Sable lay awake again, this time not from fear, but from a kind of electric anticipation. Tomorrow, everything would end, one way or another. Either Adrian would be exposed and Cross would be stopped, or she'd be dead and Adrian would walk free. She thought about calling her mother, who she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Thought about writing something down, some kind of final message in case things went wrong. But in the end, she just lay there, feeling the weight of the gun against her ribs, and waited for morning. The day of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like a lie. Sable dressed in the outfit Maya had picked out. A simple black dress, elegant but not flashy, designed to help her blend into the crowd. The gun went into a small holster strapped to her thigh, hidden beneath the dress. You won't be able to get to it quickly, Voss warned. I know, but I'm not walking in there unarmed. At 6 p.m., they left for the venue in a motorcade of unmarked vehicles. Sable sat in the back of an SUV with Reeves, watching Nashville pass by through tinted windows. The streets were crowded with people heading to dinner, to bars, to whatever normal people did on a Saturday night. She wondered what it felt like to be normal, to not know that somewhere in this city, a killer was preparing to end your life. They arrived at the Schermerhorn through a back entrance, bypassing the red carpet, where photographers were already gathering. Inside, the venue was being transformed, staff arranging flowers, testing lights, setting up the bar. In a few hours, it would be filled with Nashville's most powerful people, and Sable would be there, holding a tablet that contained enough evidence to end Adrian Cade's career and possibly his life. Reeves led her to a small room backstage that had been designated as their command center. Banks of monitors showed security camera feeds from every angle of the venue, Agents moved in and out, receiving assignments, checking equipment. Here, Maya said, handing Sable a tablet. Everything's already loaded. At 9:45, you'll get a text from me. That's your signal. You open this app, she demonstrated, and hit this button. That's it. The upload starts automatically. Sable took the tablet, her hands surprisingly steady. What if something happens to you? What if you can't send the text? Then Voss will. And if something happens to both of us, Agent Reeves has the backup signal. One way or another, this is happening. Okay. The next 2 hours were a blur of final preparations. Hair and makeup artists came to make sure Sable looked camera ready. Wardrobe adjustments. Last-minute security briefings. Through it all, she felt strangely disconnected, like she was watching someone else get ready to walk into a war zone. At 7:15, the first guests started arriving. Sable watched them on the monitors. Men in tuxedos, women in designer gowns, all smiling and laughing like this was just another glamorous night in Nashville. At 8:30, Voss found her standing alone in the command center, staring at the screens. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I meant what I said before. If anything feels wrong, you get out. Screw the plan, screw the evidence. You run. I won't need to run. You'll all be there. Sable, I'm not running anymore, Lucien." She turned to look at him, and for the first time she saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. "Whatever happens tonight, I need you to know that you gave me something no one else has in 3 years." "What's that?" "A choice." Before he could respond, Maya appeared in the doorway. "It's time." Sable took a breath, picked up the tablet, and followed them out. The main hall was stunning. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of guests seated at round tables covered in white linen. A string quartet played softly in the corner. On stage, a podium stood ready for the night's presentations. Sable's seat was front row, center, exactly as planned. She sat down, flanked by agents posing as guests. Voss was 3 seats to her left. Maya was somewhere in the back, coordinating with the team. The program started. Speeches about Nashville's music legacy, about the importance of the industry, about the lawyers and executives who made it all possible. Sable barely heard any of it. Her eyes kept scanning the crowd, looking for anyone who seemed out of place, anyone who might be Elliot Cross. But everyone looked normal, wealthy, comfortable, safe. At 9:20, the MC stepped to the podium. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. This year's Legal Excellence Award goes to a man whose dedication to his clients and tireless work ethic have made him one of Nashville's most respected attorneys. Please welcome Adrian Cade. The room erupted in applause. Sable's stomach turned. A side door opened, and Adrian walked out. He was wearing a tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, his smile warm and humble. He looked exactly like the man she'd married. Charming, successful, untouchable. No handcuffs, no prison jumpsuit. Just Adrian, freed on some technicality she hadn't been briefed on, walking onto that stage like he owned it. Sable's heart stopped. She looked at Voss, whose face had gone pale. Around the room, she could see agents speaking urgently into their radios. This wasn't the plan. Adrian took the podium, accepting the Crystal Award with practiced grace. He looked out at the audience, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. He smiled. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying through the hall. "This is truly an honor. When I started my career 20 years ago, I never imagined I'd be standing here, surrounded by so many of you who've become not just colleagues, but friends." Sable's phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Abort. Get out now." But Sable didn't move. She stared at Adrian, watching him perform, and felt something inside her snap. "I want to take a moment to thank someone very special," Adrian continued, his eyes still on her. "My wife, Sable. She's here tonight, and I couldn't have done any of this without her support." The spotlight swung to Sable. Hundreds of faces turned to look at her, cameras focused on her. She was trapped in light, unable to move, unable to breathe. Adrian smiled wider. "Sable, would you join me up here?" It wasn't a request, it was a command, delivered with the same controlled authority he'd used for 3 years to keep her in line. Voss grabbed her arm. "Don't!" But Sable stood. The tablet was in her hands. Her gun was strapped to her thigh. And Adrian was standing on that stage, thinking he'd already won. She walked toward the stairs. Every step felt like walking underwater. The audience watched, probably thinking this was a sweet moment, a husband honoring his wife. They didn't see the rage in Adrian's eyes, barely concealed beneath his smile. Sable climbed the stairs and crossed the stage. Adrian held out his hand. She didn't take it. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly, her voice lost beneath the applause. "What I should have done weeks ago." His smile never wavered. "Taking back control. You're supposed to be in custody. Emergency appeal. Granted an hour ago. Turns out unlawfully obtained evidence really is inadmissible." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "Did you really think you could beat me?" Sable's hand tightened on the tablet. Around her, she could sense the agents moving, trying to reposition, but they were trapped by the crowd, by the cameras, by the need to not cause a scene. Adrian took the microphone again. "I have a confession to make. My wife and I have been going through a difficult time. She's been struggling with some personal issues, making accusations that simply aren't true. And tonight, I think it's time we address that publicly." Sable's blood ran cold. He was going to do it. He was going to destroy her credibility in front of everyone, paint her as unstable, unreliable. By the time he was done, no one would believe a word she said. "Adrian, don't." Oh. Sable's been working with some people who convinced her that I'm involved in criminal activity, money laundering, even murder. He said it with a sad shake of his head, like it pained him to admit. "She's been manipulated by individuals with their own agenda, and as much as it breaks my heart, I can't let her continue down this path." The room had gone quiet. Every eye was on them. Sable felt the weight of the tablet in her hands. 9:45. That was the timeline. But it was only 9:32. 13 minutes too early. She looked out at the audience and found Voss. He was staring at her, his expression stricken. He shook his head slightly. "Don't do it." But Adrian was still talking, still dismantling her piece by piece. "I hope everyone here can forgive her. She's not well. She needs help, and I'm going to make sure she gets it." The implication was clear. Psychiatric hold, institutionalization. A legal cage he'd build around her that would be even harder to escape than the physical one. Sable's finger hovered over the button on the tablet. 13 minutes early. The upload might not work right. The media might not be ready. The whole plan could fall apart. But if she waited, if she let Adrian finish this speech, it wouldn't matter. He'd already be painting her as crazy, and nothing she said would change that narrative. She looked at Adrian, at his confident smile, at the award in his hand that represented everything he'd built on the backs of people he'd destroyed. And she pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then screens throughout the venue flickered. The feed that had been showing the stage switched to something else. Financial records, emails, the ledger from the storage unit. Adrian's smile faltered. On every screen, his crimes played out in high definition. The audience gasped. People pulled out their phones. The cameras that had been focused on the stage swung toward the monitors, and Adrian's carefully constructed empire began to crack. "What did you do?" he whispered. Sable met his eyes. "I made a choice." That's when she heard the gunshot. The sound ripped through the hall, impossibly loud, followed immediately by screaming. People dove under tables, agents drew weapons. The lights went out, plunging the venue into chaos. Sable dropped to the stage floor, her ears ringing. She couldn't see anything in the darkness, couldn't tell where the shot had come from. Then hands grabbed her strong, pulling her backward. She tried to fight, but whoever had her was stronger. "It's me," Voss's voice in her ear. "Stay down." He dragged her off the stage into the wings, pressing her against the wall. Around them, she could hear shouting, more shots, the sound of hundreds of people trying to escape at once. "Where's Adrian?" she gasped. "I don't know. Reeves has agents sweeping the building." Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. Sable could see the stage from where they crouched. The podium was empty. Adrian was gone. "Cross is here," she said. "I know." He said someone on the inside. Another shot. This one closer. Voss pushed Sable behind him, his own gun drawn. A figure appeared in the doorway. Agent Reynolds, one of her protection detail. He was bleeding from his shoulder, his gun hanging loose in his hand. "They're everywhere," he said, his voice ragged. "Cross brought a team. They're hunting for her." "How many?" Voss demanded. At least 4. Maybe more. They hit the command center first, took out our communications. Sable's mind raced. A team. Cross hadn't come alone. He'd brought enough people to cut through FBI security like it was nothing. "We need to move," Voss said. "Get her out of the building." Reynolds nodded, but as he stepped forward, Sable saw something. A small movement, barely perceptible, his left hand dropping to his belt. "Voss," she started. Reynolds moved fast, bringing up a second gun, one that hadn't been there a moment ago. But Voss was faster. His shot caught Reynolds' center mass, dropping him instantly. Sable stared at the body, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. "He was the leak," Voss said quietly. "Cross's inside man." Before Sable could respond, the door behind them burst open. 2 figures in tactical gear stormed through, weapons raised. Voss fired twice, hitting one. The second got off a shot that went wide, and then Voss was on him, the 2 men grappling in the narrow corridor. Sable scrambled backward, reaching for the gun strapped to her thigh. Her fingers were clumsy with adrenaline, but she got it free, holding it in both hands the way Voss had taught her. The tactical operative got Voss in a headlock. Sable raised the gun, trying to find a clear shot, but they were moving too fast, too close together. "Shoot him!" Voss choked out. Sable's hand shook. She couldn't. She'd never... The operative's hand moved toward a knife at his belt. Sable pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked the gun from her hands. The operative jerked, stumbled. Voss broke free and finished him with a shot to the head. Then Voss was pulling her up, dragging her down the corridor. Behind them, she could hear more footsteps, more shouting. They burst through a service door into a stairwell. Voss took the stairs 2 at a time, half carrying Sable. Her dress caught on her heels and she kicked them off, running barefoot on cold concrete. "Where are we going?" she gasped. "Roof. Reeves should have the extraction team there." But when they reached the roof access door, it was locked from the outside. Voss slammed his shoulder against it. Once, twice, it didn't budge. Shit. They were trapped. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell behind them. Voss positioned himself between Sable and the stairs, his gun raised. "Get behind me." Sable pressed her back against the door, her own gun held in trembling hands. This was it. The end of the line. Cross and his team on one side, a locked door on the other, and nowhere left to run. A figure appeared on the landing below, then another. 3 total, all armed, all moving with the kind of precision that said they'd done this before. "Drop your weapons," the lead one said. His voice was calm, professional. Not Cross, she'd recognize his voice, but someone working for him. "Go fuck yourself," Voss replied. The man shrugged. "Have it your way." He raised his weapon, and then the roof access door behind Sable exploded inward, blown off its hinges by a breaching charge. Agent Reeves came through first, followed by 4 more HRT operators, all of them firing in controlled bursts. The stairwell turned into chaos. Gunfire, smoke, bodies falling. Sable felt hands on her shoulders, pulling her backward through the door onto the roof. She stumbled into open air, the Nashville skyline spinning around her. A helicopter sat on the landing pad, rotors already spinning. "Move!" Reeves shouted, and Sable ran. Voss was right behind her. They reached the helicopter and scrambled inside. The pilot didn't wait for everyone to be seated before lifting off. Through the open door, Sable could see the Schermerhorn getting smaller below them. Police cars surrounded it, their lights flashing. The gala that was supposed to be Adrian's triumph had turned into a crime scene. Reeves was on the radio, coordinating with ground teams. "Multiple hostiles down, situation not contained. Repeat, not contained." "Where's Adrian?" Sable asked. Reeves looked at her, and something in her expression made Sable's stomach drop. "We don't know. He disappeared in the chaos. We have teams searching, but he's gone." Reeves didn't deny it. Sable sat back, the gun still clutched in her hand, and felt the reality of what had just happened crash over her. The evidence had been released. The whole world had seen Adrian's crimes, but he was still out there, still free, and Elliot Cross was still hunting her. The helicopter banked hard, heading away from downtown. Sable looked at Voss, whose face was streaked with someone else's blood. "We didn't get him," she said. Voss's jaw was tight. "Not yet." But as Nashville disappeared behind them and the helicopter flew toward whatever safe house the FBI had prepared, Sable knew the truth. This wasn't over. The war had just begun. The safe house was a farmhouse 40 miles outside Nashville, surrounded by fields that stretched to the horizon. Sable watched the sun come up through a window with bars on it, her hands wrapped around coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Reynolds falling, saw the muzzle flash from her own gun, heard the sound of that body hitting the floor. She'd killed someone, shot a man in the back while Voss fought for his life. The fact that Reynolds had been trying to kill them didn't make the weight of it any lighter. Voss sat across from her at the kitchen table, his face drawn with exhaustion. He had a bandage on his arm where a bullet had grazed him during the escape. Neither of them had spoken in over an hour. Maya burst through the door just after 7, her phone pressed to her ear, her expression tight with barely controlled rage. She ended the call and threw the phone onto the table hard enough to crack the screen. Adrian's lawyers are calling the gala a terrorist attack, she said. They're saying we orchestrated the whole thing to frame him, that the evidence was fabricated. That's insane, Sable said. We have his handwriting, his phones, everything from the storage unit, which his team is arguing was planted. They've already filed motions to suppress all of it, claiming we violated his civil rights with an unlawful raid. Voss's jaw tightened. The warrant was clean. Was it? Because Adrian's lawyers found something. A technical error in the affidavit, a date that doesn't match up. It's minor, but it might be enough to get the whole thing thrown out. Sable felt the room tilt. So we have nothing again. We have the uploaded evidence from last night. It's all over the news, social media, everywhere. Public opinion has turned against him completely. Public opinion doesn't put people in prison. Maya didn't argue. She pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. There's more. Cross and his team got away. We have 3 bodies from the Schermerhorn, all hired guns, no identification, nothing linking them back to Adrian, and Cross himself vanished like smoke. What about the guests? Witnesses? Over 200 people saw the screens, saw the evidence, but none of them saw Adrian do anything illegal at the gala itself. He gave a speech, that's all. And then the shooting started and he disappeared in the chaos. Sable set down her coffee cup before she threw it. So he walks. Again. Not if we can find him before his lawyers do, Voss said. He's running now. That means he's vulnerable. Or it means he's got an exit strategy we don't know about. Maya pulled up something on her cracked phone. We've been tracking his known associates, his properties, his financial accounts. Everything's been frozen or seized, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have resources we haven't found. What about Cross? Sable asked. Can we use him to get to Adrian? Cross is a ghost. We've been trying to track him for 5 years. Every time we get close, he disappears. Maya's expression darkened. But there's something else. We pulled phone records from the Schermerhorn. In the 30 minutes before the shooting started, someone inside the venue made a call to a burner phone registered in Franklin. Reynolds, Voss said. That's what we thought. But the timing doesn't work. Reynolds was with Sable when that call was made. It was someone else. The 3 of them looked at each other, the implication settling like ice water. There's another leak, Sable said quietly. Maya nodded. And whoever it is, they're still feeding Adrian information right now. The door opened and Agent Reeves walked in, her tactical gear replaced with a simple FBI windbreaker. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. We've got something, she said. Local PD just responded to a call at a motel off I-40. Guest reported hearing a disturbance in the next room. When officers arrived, they found a body. Adrian? Voss asked sharply. No, but you're going to want to see this. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the East Side Motor Lodge, a rundown place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Crime scene tape cordoned off room 12. Inside, a man lay on the bed with 2 bullets in his chest. Sable stood in the doorway, staring at the body. She'd never seen him before, but there was something familiar about the face. His name is Marcus Chen, Reeves said. He's been on our radar for years. Financial crimes mostly, money laundering through shell corporations. Maya was already pulling up files on her tablet. Chen's name appears in Adrian's records. Multiple transactions, all routed through offshore accounts. So Adrian had him killed, Voss said. Looks that way, cleaning up loose ends before he runs. Sable stepped closer to the body, studying the man's face. He looked peaceful, almost serene, like he'd been expecting this. On the nightstand beside the bed was a phone. Not a burner, but an actual smartphone, unlocked and opened to a messaging app. "Has anyone checked that?" she asked. Reeves pulled on gloves and picked it up. Her eyes widened as she scrolled. Jesus Christ. What? Messages between Chen and someone called Broker, discussing arrangements for Adrian's extraction, flight manifests, passport information, wire transfers. Reeves looked up. "Adrian's planning to leave the country. Tonight." "Where?" Maya demanded. "Cayman Islands first, then on to somewhere without extradition. But here's the interesting part." Reeves turned the phone so they could see. The last message came in 20 minutes ago, from Broker. It says, "Package ready. Pick up at alternate location. You have 2 hours." "Chen's dead," Voss said. "So who's picking up the package?" "Adrian himself," Sable said, and suddenly she understood. Chen was the middle man. Now that he's gone, Adrian has to retrieve whatever Broker prepared personally. "Do we know where?" Maya asked. Reeves scrolled through the messages. An address in East Nashville, warehouse district near the river. Maya was already on her phone, pulling up satellite images. That area is mostly abandoned, industrial buildings, shipping containers. Perfect place for a handoff. Or a trap, Voss said quietly. They all looked at him. "Think about it. Cross takes out Chen, leaves the phone where we'll find it. Make sure we know exactly where Adrian's going to be." Voss's expression was grim. "This is too easy." "Maybe," Maya said. "But we don't have a choice. If there's a chance Adrian's going to be at that warehouse, we have to move." Sable felt something cold settle in her chest. "Cross wants me there." "What?" "That's what this is. He couldn't get to me at the safe house, so he's creating a situation where I have to come to him." She met Voss's eyes. "He knows I won't let Adrian slip away. He's betting I'll show up." "Then you don't go," Voss said flatly. "We send a tactical team, surround the warehouse, take them both. And if Adrian sees your team and runs, if Cross is watching and calls it off," Sable shook her head. "I have to be there. It's the only way this works." Maya looked like she wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed. She answered, listened, then went pale. "Understood. We're on our way." She hung up and looked at them. "That was my director. He just got word from the federal prosecutor. They're dropping all charges against Adrian." The words didn't make sense at first. Sable heard them, understood the individual meanings, but together they formed something impossible. "What?" Voss said. "The warrant issues, the questions about evidence tampering, the media circus. The prosecutor says they can't win. Adrian's lawyers have shredded the case. If they move forward, they'll lose. And losing means Adrian walks free with grounds to sue the FBI for harassment." Maya's voice was hollow. "It's over. They're cutting their losses." "When?" Sable asked. "Official announcement goes out at noon, 3 hours from now." Sable looked at the clock on the wall of the motel room. 9 a.m. In 3 hours, Adrian would be officially exonerated. Free to leave the country, to disappear, to live out his life somewhere warm and sunny, while Marcus Devereaux and Dante Rivera and everyone else he'd destroyed stayed dead. Unless she stopped him first. "I'm going to the warehouse," she said. "Sable?" Maya started. "I'm going. With or without backup? With or without FBI approval?" She turned to Voss. "Are you coming?" Voss studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Yeah." Maya closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was something resigned in her expression. "This is a terrible idea." "I know. If you do this, I can't protect you. Officially, I can't even acknowledge you're there." "I understand." Maya pulled out her service weapon and set it on the table. Then she pulled her badge and did the same. "Then unofficially, I'm with you. We finish this." Reeves looked at the three of them like they'd lost their minds. "You're all going to lose your jobs. Probably face charges." "Probably," Maya agreed. "You should leave. Go back to the field office. File a report saying we went rogue." Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then she unclipped her own badge and set it beside Maya's. "Fuck it. I didn't join the FBI to watch monsters walk free." They planned it in the car on the way to East Nashville. The warehouse was isolated, surrounded by empty lots and rusted shipping containers. 2 ways in, front loading dock and a side entrance. Voss and Reeves would cover the exits while Maya and Sable went in through the front. We don't know how many people Cross brought, Maya said as they drove. Could be just him, could be another team. Either way, we're outgunned. Then we use that, Voss said from the back seat. They'll expect a frontal assault. We give them something else. Like what? Me. Sable's voice was steady. Cross wants me, so I give him exactly what he wants. I walk in alone, unarmed, hands visible. Make him think I'm surrendering. That's suicide, Maya said flatly. Not if you're in position. Not if the second he commits, you take the shot. And Adrian? Adrian's mine. They pulled off the highway and into the industrial district just after 10. The warehouse was exactly where Chen's phone said it would be. A squat concrete building with boarded windows and weeds growing through cracked pavement. A single black SUV sat in the loading dock. Maya parked 3 blocks away, and they approached on foot, using the shipping containers for cover. The air smelled like rust and river water. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn sounded. Voss moved ahead, scouting the perimeter. He came back shaking his head. No guards outside. Either they're confident, or it really is a trap. Probably both, Reeves muttered. Sable checked the gun Voss had given her. A different one this time, lighter, easier to conceal. She tucked it into the small of her back, hidden beneath her jacket. You sure about this? Voss asked quietly. She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. If I don't come out in 10 minutes, we're coming in after 5. Sable managed a thin smile. Good. She walked across the empty lot alone, her hands raised to shoulder height, palms out. The morning sun was warm on her face. Somewhere above, birds circled. The world felt very large and very small at the same time. The loading dock door was open. Sable climbed the concrete steps and walked inside. The warehouse was dim, lit only by sunlight filtering through cracks in the roof. Wooden crates were stacked along the walls. In the center of the space, 2 figures waited. Adrian stood with his hands in his pockets, wearing jeans and a simple black shirt. No suit, no polish, just the man beneath all the performance. He looked tired. Beside him stood Elliot Cross. Cross was younger than Sable expected. Mid-30s, lean build, wearing tactical pants and a jacket that bulged with concealed weapons. His face was forgettable, the kind you'd pass on the street and never remember. But his eyes were old. They'd seen things that hollowed people out from the inside. Mrs. Varelli, Cross said politely, thank you for coming. Where's the extraction package? Sable asked, keeping her voice level. There isn't one. Chen's phone was bait. We needed you to come, and we knew you wouldn't be able to resist. Cross tilted his head slightly. You're very predictable. Adrian still hadn't spoken. He just watched her with an expression she couldn't read. So what now? Sable asked. You kill me and Adrian disappears. Something like that. The FBI knows I'm here. No, they don't. We've been monitoring their communications. The official team is heading to the airport based on a tip we planted an hour ago. Cross smiled thinly. Right now, you're completely alone. He was wrong, but Sable didn't correct him. If you're going to do it, just do it. In a moment. First, Mr. Cade wanted to say something. Adrian finally moved, stepping closer. Sable's hand twitched toward the gun at her back, but she forced herself to stay still. I loved you, Adrian said quietly. When we met, when we got married, that was real. I need you to know that. It wasn't real. You needed someone to use, and I was convenient. No. His voice cracked slightly. You were never convenient. You were brilliant and kind and everything I wasn't. I thought maybe you could fix me, make me into someone better. But I couldn't. No. And when I realized that, I should have let you go. Instead, I turned you into a weapon, used you to hurt people. He looked down at his hands. I'm sorry for that. Sable laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're sorry. Marcus Devereaux is dead. Dante Rivera is dead. How many others, Adrian? How many people died because of information I gave you? 7 total. That we can prove. The number landed like a physical blow. 7 people. 7 lives she'd helped end without knowing what she was doing. And you think sorry fixes that? Her voice was shaking now. You think I can just forgive you and move on? No, I think you're going to have to live with it, same as me. Adrian's eyes were red, like he'd been crying. That's the real punishment, isn't it? Not prison, not death, just carrying the weight of what we've done until it crushes us. I didn't know what I was doing. You did. Does that make it better? You still said the words, still passed along the information. He stepped even closer. We're the same, Sable. Both of us pretending we're better than we are while people die around us. Sable's hand moved to the gun at her back, fingers closing around the grip. I wouldn't, Cross said calmly. He'd drawn his own weapon, aimed directly at her chest. Slowly, 2 fingers, set it on the floor. Sable pulled the gun out carefully and placed it on the concrete. It made a hollow sound that echoed through the warehouse. Kick it away. She did. Cross nodded to Adrian. Say your goodbyes. We need to move. Adrian looked at her one more time, and something in his expression broke. I never wanted it to end like this. Yes, you did. You planned it from the beginning. Sable's voice was cold now. All the fear burned away, leaving only clarity. The life insurance policy, the abuse calibrated just enough to keep me dependent but not visible enough for anyone to intervene. You were building toward this from the day we met. That's not... Don't lie. Not now. At least give me the truth. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. You're right. I saw what you were. Smart, observant, hungry to be loved. And I knew I could use that. Shape you into exactly what I needed. Why? Because I could. Because you were there. He smiled sadly. Because I'm a monster, Sable. I always have been. Cross checked his watch. We're done here. He raised his weapon. The gunshot that followed didn't come from Cross's gun. It came from above. From the catwalk where Maya had positioned herself with a rifle 20 minutes earlier while Sable had walked through the front door. Cross went down hard, blood spreading across his chest. His weapon clattered to the floor. Adrian spun, looking for the shooter, and Sable moved. She dove for the gun she'd kicked away, came up with it in both hands, and fired. The first shot went wide. Adrian ran, heading for a door at the back of the warehouse. Sable fired again and saw concrete explode near his shoulder. Voss and Reeves burst through the loading dock entrance, weapons drawn. Adrian disappeared through the back door into what looked like an office area. Sable ran after him. The office was small, cramped, filled with ancient filing cabinets and a desk covered in dust. Adrian stood at the far end, trapped. There was a window, but it was boarded shut. No way out. He turned to face her, breathing hard. Sable aimed the gun at his chest. Her hands were steady now. No shaking, no fear, just the weight of the weapon and the man who'd destroyed her life standing 10 feet away. It's over, she said. Is it? Adrian's smile was bitter. You shoot me. You're no better than I am. Just another killer adding to the body count. Maybe. But at least I'll be alive. Will you? Or will you spend the rest of your life seeing my face every time you close your eyes? He took a step forward. You think killing me gives you closure? It doesn't. It just makes you like me. I'm already like you. You made sure of that. Then prove me wrong. Lower the gun. Walk away. Let the system handle this. The system just dropped all charges against you. In 2 hours, you're a free man. So what? You become judge and executioner? Decide who lives and dies? Another step. That's not justice, Sable. That's just revenge. He was right. She knew he was right. But standing there with the gun in her hands and Adrian's face in her sights, she couldn't find a reason to care. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Sable. Maya's voice from the doorway, quiet but firm. Don't. He killed 7 people. He tried to kill me. I know. And he'll pay for that. But not like this. The charges were dropped. Federal charges. But attempted murder at the gala? That's state jurisdiction. Tennessee's already issuing a warrant. Maya stepped into the room, her own weapon lowered. Let me take him in. Do this the right way. Sable kept the gun trained on Adrian. What if he runs again? He won't get the chance, I promise you. Adrian laughed. You can't promise that. My lawyers will have me out in 48 hours. Maybe, Maya said. But you won't make it 48 hours. Something in her voice made Adrian's smile falter. What are you talking about? Maya pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward him. It showed a news broadcast, breaking coverage of the gala shooting. But the footage being shown wasn't from the main hall. It was from the backstage area. Security camera footage of Adrian in the chaos, pulling a gun from his jacket, shooting one of the FBI agents in the back. Adrian's face went white. "That's not... I didn't..." "You did. We have this footage. The ballistics. The witness statements." Maya's expression was cold. "You murdered a federal agent, Adrian. There's no walking away from that." The room went silent except for Adrian's breathing, which had gone rapid and shallow. Sable lowered the gun slowly. "You shot someone?" "He was in my way. I was trying to get out, and he..." Adrian stopped, realizing what he was admitting. "You killed him," Sable said quietly. "Just like you killed Marcus, like you killed Dante, like you were going to kill me." Adrian sank against the wall, all the fight draining out of him. He looked small suddenly, powerless, just a man who'd built an empire on cruelty and watched it collapse in real time. "I want my lawyer," he whispered. Maya moved forward, pulling out handcuffs. "You'll get one. Right after you're processed for first-degree murder of a federal officer." She cuffed him efficiently and read him his rights. Adrian didn't resist. He just stood there, staring at nothing, as everything he'd tried to build crumbled to dust. Reeves appeared in the doorway. "Cross is alive. Barely. Medics are on the way." "Good," Maya said. "I want him to stand trial too." They led Adrian out through the warehouse. As they passed Cross's body, not dead yet, but close, the killer's eyes opened. He looked directly at Sable. "Should have taken the deal," he rasped. Sable stopped. "There was never a deal, just more lies." Cross smiled, blood on his teeth. "Welcome to the club." Then his eyes closed and he didn't open them again. Outside, the morning had turned bright and warm. Police cars surrounded the warehouse, their lights flashing. News helicopters circled overhead. Somewhere in the chaos, Sable heard Maya on the phone, coordinating with local authorities, making sure everything was documented properly. Voss found her standing by one of the shipping containers, staring at the river in the distance. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know what I am." He didn't try to comfort her with platitudes, just stood beside her while the world continued moving around them. "Maya says the case is solid now," he said after a while. "Between the agent's murder and Cross's testimony, if he survives, Adrian's not walking away this time. And the other charges? The money laundering, the contract manipulation? Federal prosecutor is reopening the investigation. With Adrian in custody and Cross neutralized, witnesses are starting to come forward, people who were too afraid before." Voss glanced at her. "You did that. You broke the machine." Sable thought about Marcus Devereaux, about Clara Mendoza and all the others whose names she'd never know. "I helped build it first. You didn't know. Does that matter?" Voss was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. But I think you get to decide what matters now. Adrian doesn't own that anymore." They stood in silence, watching the police process the scene. Eventually Maya came over. "We need your statement," she said to Sable. "Official record of everything that happened." "Am I under arrest?" "No. You acted in self-defense. Multiple witnesses will confirm that." Maya paused. "But there will be questions, inquiries. Your name is going to be everywhere." Sable had expected that. The girl who brought down Adrian Cade. The waitress who became a witness. They'd write articles, make podcasts, maybe even a documentary. Her life would be dissected and analyzed until there was nothing left that belonged to her alone. "I want to make a statement," she said. "Not just about tonight, about everything. I want people to know what happened to Marcus and Dante and the others." Maya nodded. "We can arrange that. And I want to help. Other people like me. People who got used without knowing, who got manipulated into doing things they didn't understand. Like witness protection? Like a support system, resources, legal help, something real." Voss was looking at her with something that might have been respect. "That's a lot of work." "I know, but I need to do something with this. Can't just carry it around forever." "No," Voss agreed quietly. "You can't." The next 6 months were a blur of depositions and testimony and media coverage that turned Sable's life inside out. Adrian's trial became national news. The celebrity lawyer who'd orchestrated murders and laundered millions while hiding behind a facade of respectability. Every detail of his operation was exposed, picked apart, analyzed. Cross survived his injuries and, in exchange for a plea deal, provided testimony that implicated 24 people in Adrian's network. Judges, politicians, producers, all of them connected to the machine that had destroyed so many lives. Clara Mendoza came forward. So did 6 other artists who'd been manipulated, blackmailed, or destroyed by Adrian's contracts. Their stories filled courtrooms and newspapers, painting a picture of systematic abuse that had gone on for over a decade. Adrian tried to fight. His lawyers filed motion after motion, attacked witness credibility, argued about evidence admissibility. But the jury didn't care about technicalities. They saw the ledger with names and dollar amounts. They heard the recordings. They watched security footage of Adrian shooting a federal agent in the back. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for October 15th. Sable didn't attend. She'd already given her testimony, already faced Adrian across a courtroom and told the truth about what he'd done. She didn't need to watch him in handcuffs to know it was over. Instead, she spent that day in a small office on the east side of Nashville, signing papers that officially established the Moss Initiative for Coerced Witness Protection. The name came from something Voss had said during one of their late-night planning sessions, that people like Sable were like moss, resilient enough to grow even in the darkest places. She liked that. Liked the idea that survival could become something beautiful if you gave it time and space. The initiative started small. Just Sable and a pro bono lawyer named Rachel Torres, working out of a converted church building that had been sitting empty for years. They helped 3 people that first month, all of them connected to criminal operations they hadn't fully understood, all of them carrying guilt and trauma that threatened to crush them. Sable sat across from each of them and told her story. Not as a victim, not as someone seeking sympathy, just as a person who'd survived and was choosing what came next. By month 3, they'd helped 17 people. By month 6, they had funding from 2 foundations and a waiting list of cases. Maya transferred to the Nashville field office permanently and became the initiative's law enforcement liaison. Reeves left the FBI entirely and joined as head of security. Together, they built something that actually worked, a place where people could come when the system had failed them. Voss stayed on the periphery. He helped with funding, made calls when Sable needed doors opened, but he didn't insert himself into the day-to-day operations. She appreciated that. Appreciated that he understood she needed to build this herself. They had dinner sometimes, quiet meals where they didn't talk about Adrian or the trial or anything heavy. Just 2 people who'd been through hell together and come out the other side still capable of conversation. One night in late November, Sable got a call from Maya. Adrian was sentenced today, she said without preamble. Life without possibility of parole. Federal Supermax facility in Colorado. Sable set down the glass she'd been holding, her hand trembling slightly. Okay. There's more. He asked to see you. No. I told him you'd say that, but he wanted me to pass along a message. I don't want to hear it. He said to tell you that he hopes you find peace, that he knows he destroyed any chance at that for himself. But maybe you can do better. Sable laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. He doesn't get to do that. Doesn't get to play the repentant husband looking for absolution. I know. That's why I'm telling you as a courtesy, not because I think you should care. Maya paused. How are you doing? Really? Sable looked around her apartment, small, simple, nothing like the place she'd shared with Adrian. There were plants on the windowsill that she actually remembered to water, books on the shelf she was reading for pleasure, not because someone told her she should, a life that belonged entirely to her. I'm okay, she said, and meant it. Some days are harder than others, but I'm okay. Good. That's good. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics for the initiative, about an upcoming case that needed Sable's input. Normal things. Work things. The kind of conversation that didn't carry the weight of everything they'd been through. When Sable hung up, she walked to the window and looked out at Nashville. The city lights sparkled in the cold November air. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives, going to dinner, falling in love, making mistakes, trying to survive. She was just one of them now. Not special. Not cursed. Just human. 6 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Sable stood in front of a room full of people and told her story one more time. But this time it wasn't in a courtroom or a police station. It was at a conference for victim advocacy groups, and she was the keynote speaker. She talked about Adrian, about the years she'd spent not knowing she was being used, about the moment she'd realized what she'd done and the choice she'd made to fight back instead of hide. "I'm not a hero," she said, looking out at the audience. "I helped kill people. Not intentionally, but the result is the same. 7 people died because of information I provided. I'll carry that for the rest of my life." The room was silent, listening. "But I'm also not just a victim. I made choices. Bad ones sometimes. But they were mine. And when I finally understood what was happening, I chose to stop it. I chose to fight." She paused, feeling the weight of every eye on her. "That's what I want you to understand. You can be both. You can carry guilt and still deserve a future. You can be broken and still rebuild." After the speech, people came up to talk to her. Some wanted advice. Some wanted to share their own stories. Sable listened to each of them, offering what help she could. Near the end of the evening, a young woman approached, early 20s with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of exhaustion that came from surviving something terrible. "My name's Nova," she said quietly. "Nova Hale. I saw you on the news during the trial." Sable recognized the name. Nova Hale was one of the artists Adrian had destroyed. She'd signed a contract at 19 that gave him control of every song she'd ever written. When she'd tried to walk away, he'd buried her career so completely that no label would touch her. "I remember," Sable said gently. "I'm sorry for what happened to you." Nova shook her head. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to say thank you. Because of you, I got my songs back. The contracts were voided as part of the settlement. I own my music again." "That's wonderful. I'm recording an album, my real album, the one I should have made 5 years ago." Nova's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "I want you to come to the release show in June. It's small, just a Nashville venue, but I want you there. You gave me my voice back." Sable felt something tight in her chest loosen. "I'd love to." The show was at a small club in East Nashville, the kind of place with sticky floors and a stage barely big enough for a 4-piece band. Sable arrived with Voss and Maya, squeezing into the packed room as Nova took the stage. The first song was raw and honest, about being used and finding the strength to leave. Nova's voice was powerful, controlled, every note carrying the weight of experience. The crowd was silent, listening. By the third song, people were crying. By the fifth, they were on their feet. Sable stood in the back, watching this young woman reclaim the thing that had been stolen from her, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not quite hope, not quite peace, but something close. After the show, Nova found her in the crowd. "What did you think?" she asked, breathless and glowing. "I think you're going to be extraordinary," Sable said honestly. Nova hugged her, quick and fierce. "Thank you. For everything." As she walked back to her car that night, Sable thought about all the versions of herself she'd been. The girl who'd married Adrian thinking love meant surrender. The woman who'd survived by making herself invisible. The person who'd helped kill 7 people without knowing. The fighter who'd risked everything to stop him. She didn't know which one was real. Maybe they all were. Maybe that was the point, that people weren't single stories, weren't heroes or victims or monsters. They were just collections of choices and consequences and the messy work of trying to survive. Adrian was in a cell in Colorado, staring at walls for the rest of his life. Elliot Cross was in a different facility, serving 40 years for murder for hire. Marcus Devereaux and Dante Rivera and the others were still dead, their families still grieving. And Sable was here, in Nashville, building something out of the wreckage. It wasn't justice. Not really. Justice would have been those 7 people still being alive. Justice would have been Adrian never existing in the first place. But it was something, a scar that had finally stopped bleeding, a foundation strong enough to build on. One morning in late summer, Sable sat in her office at the Initiative, reviewing a new case file. A woman in Memphis who'd been coerced into helping her boyfriend traffic weapons. She'd had no idea what was in the packages she'd been delivering until federal agents showed up at her door. Sable picked up the phone and dialed the woman's number. "Hello?" The voice was small, frightened. "Hi, my name is Sable Varelli. I run the Moss Initiative. I understand you're looking for help." "Yes. I don't know what to do. Everyone says I'm guilty, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to help him." I know, Sable said quietly. I've been exactly where you are, and I can help. But first, I need you to understand something. What? What happened to you wasn't your fault, but what happens next is your choice. You can hide from this, or you can face it. Either way, I'll be here. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I want to face it. Good. Then let's start. Outside Sable's window, Nashville continued its endless rhythm. Traffic and construction and the distant sound of music drifting from lower Broadway. The city Adrian had tried to control that had nearly destroyed her, that had become the place where she finally learned to breathe. She looked down at her hands, no longer trembling, no longer scrubbing away ghosts. Just hands. Capable of harm, capable of help, capable of building something worth keeping. The bruises had faded months ago. The scars remained, but they didn't define her anymore. They were just part of the map of how she'd gotten here, to this office, this life, this version of herself that could sit across from frightened strangers and offer them what no one had offered her until it was almost too late. A choice. The phone rang again. Another person looking for help. Another story of manipulation and survival and the hard work of trying to live with what you'd done. Sable answered, Moss Initiative, this is Sable. How can I help you? And in that moment, sitting in an office that smelled like coffee and old paper, the Nashville sun warm on her face, her voice steady and sure, she realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was just living. Fully, honestly, with all the messy complications that came with being human. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she'd walked into Lucien Voss's car that first night. It wasn't redemption or absolution or any of the clean narratives she'd once believed in. But it was hers. And for the first time in years, that was enough.